For the scarf, I am going to be using 3 different colors of a weight 4 or worsted weight yarn. These are just kind of scraps that I have of other projects that I've done in the past. The scarf is a really great scrap project. If you have a ton of different yarn scraps, this is a really good way to use them. So I'm using a weight 4 yarn and a 5.5mm hook. I also have a written PDF pattern for this scarf if you are interested in that. I'll have that down in the description. I will also put in the description exactly how many ounces of yarn that I ended up using. So to get started, I am just going to choose my first color. I'm going to start with this blue. So to get started, I'm going to make a slip knot. And now we are going to chain the length that we would like our scarf to be. So this has to be an even number, but you could really make it as long or as short as you would like. So in the next clip, I will tell you exactly the amount that I chained. I do it a little bit different each time depending on how long I want my scarf to be. I want this one to be a little bit on the longer side, so I'll let you know in the next clip the exact number. But to chain, we are just going to take our working yarn and pull it through the loop on our hook. So yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. So there are a chain of 3, 1, 2, 3. So we're just going to keep going until we have the length of our scarf. All right, so I have my initial chain done. I chained 300. If you would like your scarf to be shorter than mine, you don't have to chain that many. I just wanted this one to be pretty long. So as long as you chained an even number, you're totally fine. So I am going to put my finger over this last stitch. So you can see the last stitch from our chain. I'm just going to grab it, put my finger over it, chain 2. And then I'm going to go into that stitch that we had our finger over, so 2 stitches away from the chain. And I am going to do a single crochet. So now I'm going to chain 1. I'm going to skip a stitch. So here's our next stitch. We're going to skip that, go into the next one. So skip, go into this one, pull up a loop. Now pull through both loops. Again, chain 1, skip the next stitch and go into the next one, single crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, go into the next one, and single crochet. So we're just going to keep doing that in the remainder of our chain. So you're going to single crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, and then go into the next one. So I am going to keep going, and then I will meet you back when I have gotten all the way down to the other end of my initial chain. All right, so we made it to the end. I just did a single crochet, chain 1, then we've got 1 stitch left. So we're going to go into that stitch, and instead of doing a full single crochet, I'm going to pull up a loop just like I would doing a single crochet. But instead of finishing it with blue, I'm going to finish it with my next color, which is this white color. So we're going to be changing colors each row. So I am going to leave a fairly long tail, and I am going to stick my next color onto my hook. I'm just going to pull on the blue to tighten it up a little bit. And I am going to pull that white through both loops to finish off that single crochet. So now we're attached in white. So now I'm going to chain 2. And I'm going to turn. So turn my work. And now I'm going to go into this chain 1 space. It's a little bit hard to see on this first row, but it does get easier to see the chain 1 spaces as we go. The first row is just a little bit tighter. So we can see that there was that single crochet, chain 1, single crochet. So here is this chain 1 space. We're just going to go right into that space. We're not going into an actual stitch. Right through that space, pull up a loop and single crochet. Now chain 1, and let's find our next space. So that's right here. Go right into that space, single crochet, chain 1, go into the next space, single crochet, chain 1, And we're just going to keep going with that pattern of going into each chain one space and single crocheting. Then we're going to chain one and go into the next one. So keep on going. Try to be mindful of your tension. You don't want it to be super, super tight, but just keep a good even tension. If you're somebody who tends to crochet super tight, maybe keep it a little bit on the looser side. So keep going, and then I will meet you back when I get a little bit closer to the end of this row. You can also go ahead and cut off the working blue yarn that is still attached to your skein. Just leave it a little bit longer because these ends are going to be incorporated into our tassels at the end. So I just cut off that working blue yarn to make it a little bit easier for me on this row. All right, so I just got back down to the end of this row. This is how mine is looking so far. So this is where we skipped those 2 stitches. So you can see there's a space here. So we're going to go right into that space and we're going to pull up 2 loops like we're going to single crochet, but we are going to change colors again. So I'm going to go in with my 3rd color, which is this brown, and I'm going to pull up and finish the rest of the single crochet with my new color. So just like we did on the other side, I'm going to stick that new color on my hook, leaving a pretty solid tail here. I'm going to grab my white and just kind of hold it against my work like this so it doesn't get super loose. And I'm just going to use the brown to pull through and finish that single crochet. Now that we're attached, we are just going to chain 2 and we are going to turn. So before I turn my work, I'm just going to cut my white working yarn off, again leaving that tail so that the white doesn't get in the way. So now we're going to turn, and we are going to keep going with the pattern of just going into every chain 1 space. So chain 1, go into that next chain 1 space and single crochet, chain 1, single crochet in the next chain 1 space, chain 1, and keep on going. So the pattern from here on out for the rest of our scarf is just going to be this repetition. I will show you one more time at the end of this row how to finish a row and then add a new color and keep going. So once I get a little bit closer to the end of this row, I will meet you back here. So I just finished this row. So now I am going to go into this space that is between the chain 2 of this row and our first single crochet. So I'm going right into that space and I am going to pull up a loop, and instead of finishing it just like we have on our last rows, I'm going to grab our next color. So I'm only using 3 colors, but you can use as many as you want. You could do a different color for each row if you wanted to. So again, I'm leaving a tail. I'm going to put that on my hook. And I am going to finish that single crochet with my new color. So now that I have that loop pulled up in my new color, I'm going to chain 2. Now we're going to turn. And just like we've been doing, I'm going to go into that first chain 1 space, single crochet, chain 1, single crochet. So we're going to keep going, and this is the pattern that we're going to be following for the rest of our scarf. So you're going to continue that repetition for the remainder of our scarf. You're just going to keep going, adding rows until you have the width that you would like. As soon as it is as thick as you would like it to be, you can stop. I'm going to keep going. I will tell you in the next clip exactly how many rows I end up doing. But I'll keep going, and then I'll meet you back here when I am finished with the width, and I'll show you how we finish it off and add our tassels. Alright, so I have crocheted as many rows as I would like. I'm ending off with 22 rows. So this is as wide as I want my scarf to be. So I'm going to stop adding rows here, and I am just going to finish off on this row. So I just did my single crochet chain 1. So now I am going to just go into that last space underneath that initial chain 2. And I am going to just tie off since this is going to be our last row. So I'm going to cut my yarn and tie off, leaving a long tail. Alright, so now we are going to turn our ends into tassels. If you don't like the tassels or you don't want to do this, you could just weave your ends in and have it kind of just be a straight edge, but I like the tassels. So what I'm going to do is just grab a chunk of about 3 or so of my ends, and I am just going to tie a knot. So super, super simple. Make a loop, pull the ends through it. And I'm just going to keep going. There's no real rhyme or reason to how I'm tying these. I'm just choosing the ends that naturally look kind of like they're clumped together, and I'm just tying them together. If you wanted to make more tassels and have your tassels be thicker, you could totally do that. I actually have a tutorial on how to make tassels, so I can go ahead and put that in the description as well as up on the screen if you're interested in a more thick, kind of denser tassel. But I like the look of them not being super, super dense for this project. So I'm going to keep going and just tying my ends into knots, and then I will do it on the other side, and I'll meet you back here. Alright, so I finished tying my ends into tassels. At this point you can leave them as is, or you could just use scissors and cut a straight line across to make them all one uniform size. But you are finished with your scarf. Thanks for watching.